Hi, welcome to the limited audio series, St. Louis Suffragists Today, an LWV-STL production and an effort by the League of Women Voters of Metro St. Louis to share the stories of our St. Louis League leaders. In a bit, we will share an interview with League member Sydell Shayer. I am Angie Dunlap, current president of the League of Women Voters of Metro St. Louis. Thank you for joining us. In 2020, the League of Women Voters celebrated their 100-year anniversary. The reality of women's rights today was enabled by the women in our past. Oral histories capture the voices of League leaders, women who were working for democracy. These oral histories help us learn about events in the St. Louis League over the past decades. The audio recordings bring you a series of interviews with longtime Leaguers. This project accompanies the book Raising Our Voices by Nicole Evelina. In the book, we learn about many issues that the LWV of St. Louis has studied and then taken action by educating members, the public, and legislators. The book, Raising Our Voices, tells about two parts of our national, state, and local league work. 1, voter service and education, and 2, issue advocacy. One of the issues we studied was abortion. And when you listen to Sydell's interview, note how the League came to consensus around a position for choice. In 1983, the LWV-US adopted the following public policy position on reproductive rights. The League of Women Voters of the United States believes that public policy in a pluralistic society must affirm the constitutional right of privacy of the individual to make reproductive choices. That is still our position today. In the interview, Sydell tells us about how while doing League study and action, she has made lifelong friends. Now please hear Anna Reynolds' interview with Sydell Shayer.
I am reading the first 40 years, and I'm enjoying it so much because I've been a League member for so long. We're doing the same things now that we did in 1920 and 30 and 40. And the subjects we're working on are the same things because things get a little bit better, but they never get to be the way we want it to be. Okay, I'm ready to start anytime you are. I talk a lot.
That's good. Do you recall when you joined the League and why?
I was 27 years old, 1957. I had one child and I guess the other one on the way. I might not have the years exactly. We lived in Weston, Massachusetts, and we were visiting friends in Boston. I was complaining about my existence. Every day I went downstairs with my son to play outside with all the neighbors and their kids, and all they talked about was what they saw on TV the previous night. We didn't even own a TV. So I just didn't feel connected. I was bored with my life except with my kids. She said, you ought to join something. And I said, what would I join? And she said, there's this organization called the League of Women Voters. When I was in the hospital, the birth of my daughter, I met somebody in the hallway who mentioned the League of Women Voters. And I said, gee, that's what I want to get involved with. I was invited a few months later to go to a meeting. And then there I was.
That's so cool. So you started with a league that was in Massachusetts?
Massachusetts. I was only in the league there for 6 years. You will find out, if you haven't already, that we have units at which people present information from the various study groups. My first experience in the league, I went to a unit meeting. The subject of the evening was taxes. And I didn't know a thing about taxes. I didn't know a thing about very much of anything. I came home and I said to my husband, this meeting is all about taxes. I don't know about that, but boy, I sure learned a lot. And that developed into my getting active in the league.
So there were a lot of education aspects.
Well, that to me is the most important part of the league. You go to a league meeting and you didn't learn something new, it wasn't a successful meeting. Up until today, that's how I evaluate league meetings.
Okay. When did you start with the St. Louis League?
Oh, I moved here in 1965.
I have that you were the president of the League of Women's Voters of Missouri. So you were a board member of the League of Women's Voters of the U.S. I also have down president of the League of Women's Voters IS. What is IS?
I was president of the League of Women Voters of Springfield, Massachusetts also. I got on that board pretty soon afterwards. And I was very shy. If I had to say anything to anybody, I used to write it out on a piece of paper and read it because I didn't feel comfortable just talking extemporaneously.
What was it that really made you want to be a leader in the League of Women's Voters? You obviously became a leader very quickly, so something sparked that in you.
I didn't plan it. It just happened. One day they said, would I be the unit chair? So I said, what do you have to do? You have to make announcements. So I said, maybe if I write it down, I can make announcements. Will you be the treasurer? Sure. Small league, not much money. You add and subtract, I'll be the treasurer. And then somehow, because when I was a treasurer, I became a member of the board. If you're willing to do things, if you volunteer to do things, people ask you to do other things.
And then you became president.
I became president. And I didn't even drive a car.
Oh, wow. So was the league office, was it close to where you lived then?
We didn't have a league office. We were just a small league.
Okay.
This was West in Springfield.
Did you meet at people's houses?
Yes.
What was the most challenging thing you faced as a league leader?
I can't tell you. Doing your job, being creative. It was not challenging. Those are the things that you did.
So for you, it was something that you didn't per se see as some sort of indomitable challenge. You just saw it as part of your job and you were going to get it done.
Yeah, it was something I felt comfortable doing. I have a challenge right now in the league, which is something new for me. I'm trying to get a bill passed in the legislature. And although I was president and I wrote all kinds of testimony for hearings and did all that stuff, I never actually tried to get legislators to support what I was working on and trying to get a bill introduced, heard, and work on. So that's, I think, the biggest challenge I've had since I've been in the league.
I can understand that'd be a huge challenge.
Yeah, and it's a subject not too many people know about. It's called the National Popular Vote, trying to get the president elected by the popular vote instead of through the way the Electoral College does.
I think that's a very good bill to be working on. I hope that you are successful with that. You moved to St. Louis roughly the same time that the Voter Rights Act was passed. Do you remember the league working on any sort of efforts that were parallel with the Voter Rights Act?
I can't give you specifics because we worked on so many things, but we were extremely active. It was national legislation. And when you have national legislation, the league studies it. Every league in the country studied it. Every league answered the same questions, and we had consensus. All the leagues agreed across the country. And so we got directives from the National League. But every local league should have studied it, agreed with the consensus, had meetings about it so all the members were knowledgeable. And then we planned a campaign, mostly education and writing to all national legislators.
How do you feel the balance has been in the league between education and voter registration?
Okay, so what you really want to ask is voter service. The league is divided basically into two things. One we call program, and it doesn't mean the conventional meaning of program. Those means the issues we work on, the stands we take on positions. We call voter service. And voter service consists of educating. Our program part is studying issues and then advocating for them. Voter service is providing information before elections, having candidates meetings, going out and giving speeches on things so the voter becomes informed. And voter registration is just one part of this big voter service, and it's much broader than that. In the league, it has a financial component to it. Voter service is primarily education, as you said. And people who donate to the league can get a tax deduction for any money that they give any money they give to the league on program would not be tax deductible.
So how do you feel that the balance in the league is between voter service and program?
It depends on the league, and it depends on the members and what you choose to do. Right now, we had hundreds of new members in the last few years, mostly because people have been concerned about the political system, the politics nationally. They have joined the league because they're interested in the voter service aspect, registering voters, making sure they know what's happening so they can make reasonable decisions on things. That's what they're interested in. It's amazing. A lot of them joined so they could register voters, the other program on issues. And there are two aspects to it. There's when we vote in a program, we study it, and we take consensus. And once we have a position, we can act on it. So if there is a particular position that people are interested in, and there are lots of people who care very strongly about education, they care very strongly about taxes. And right now, different voting systems, they care a lot about the environment. For those people who care about those issues, that half of the program is the most important to them. Those who want to be active, the moment you become a member of the league, you could be active with registering voters, with teaching what's on the ballot and whatever. I think the balance is pretty good. I have a preference. I think our claim to fame right now, what makes us more influential is probably our voter service and any of the special issues that are on the ballot. But as far as I'm concerned, I personally am more interested in the program issues. From the time I joined the league, I would pick an issue that we were studying or one that was proposed. If I thought it was important, I would work to get it passed at the national or state convention. During almost my entire league experience, 64 years, I've worked on an issue, a program issue. And of course, like trade, United Nations, development aid to less developed countries. So those are the things that interested me. I got to chair the International Relations Committee for about 15 years here in St. Louis. And I got on that committee because I did that in Massachusetts. When I moved here, I said, this lady's been the international chairman for years and she's just tired of it. She wants somebody else. That's how I got on the state board as soon as I moved here, because I had background in international issues.
You mentioned a little bit earlier that there has been an increase in membership because of national politics. The league has long been considered a nonpartisan organization. One of the questions is, were you accused of favoring progressives over conservatives?
I was on the board for a very long time after I joined. When I first became active in the league, not only the president and the vice president, but everyone on the board could not be partisan. You can be partisan personally, as long as you weren't partisan publicly. I could meet with my friends and I could talk about all the issues. And as long as I didn't have a leadership role, I just wasn't supposed to be identified with a party. You can express yourself on issues all the time, as long as you didn't connect it with parties. That's the way it was. It was very strict. It's not that way now. We're still nonpartisan. What's permissible is much greater now. You can be on the board and you can still be political. You just can't do it publicly. It was so strict that I didn't contribute to campaigns. I didn't go to fundraisers. I didn't go to political meetings, even if it was for educational purpose. I was very careful. And the more involved I was with the league and the more I knew, the more I cared about politics. I was president of the state league for 4 years. The day after my term ended, one of the candidates who was running for state legislature was having a fundraiser, and that's what I did. And that was the beginning of being more political.
You cut loose a little bit.
And then, of course, once I got on the board again, I would be more careful. But board members They should be able to do things as long as they don't associate the league with what they're doing, or if they have a prominent position.
So a board member, in theory, could contribute to a campaign, but they can't say it's on behalf of the league.
That's right. That's public information. If you give $25, nobody would never know the difference. But if you give $5,000 to something or $2,000, your name would be in the paper. So you had to be careful.
Right, for sure. So speaking of significant issues, at the time in the 60s and 70s, one of the big issues that was really shaking the nation was contraception. The pill came out in 1960, and then there were two big Supreme Court cases, Griswold, Connecticut, and Eisenstadt, Baird. Did the league take a position on contraception, and was that position considered partisan?
Okay, so you have to know how we get our position. So every league makes a recommendation, and this was a national position, so it went to the legal voters of the United States. At convention, a lot of leagues sent in the suggestion that we should study abortion. They didn't call it reproductive rights at that time. When we got to convention and we started talking, we didn't say we were going to support it. This was not to support it. Anything that the league brings to the convention is for a study.
Okay.
They bring it because they have a position and they want to act on it, but they can't act on it unless they study. They bring it as a study, as a way to get a position. Whatever the subject is, there are usually people against it and for it. I went to that convention and we started to talk about it, and people realized that it wouldn't be good for the league if we studied abortion. So they changed the wording of the position. Now, I have that in one of my books, and I could look it up. Let me get the book. It would be under social policy, and I guess it is under healthcare, or maybe it's under government. Oh, here, this is what we call it. Public policy, reproductive choices. Protect the Constitution's right of privacy of the individuals to make reproductive choices. Reproduction choices, I think, was in the title at the time. So they came up with the idea of getting rid of abortions and broadening the subject, freedom of choice. That might have been the reproductive choices. Okay, so that's what happened. So what was your question? Because it's very interesting.
You've talked about abortion a little bit. My question was actually about contraception, the birth control pill. It's all under the same thing?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if it's in there, but that's included. It's the ability to control when you're going to have a child and when you're not. This was a very interesting study that we did. 1983 is when we came out with the position. I'll tell you why. We got that position differently than we normally do. Normally, the convention chooses what we're going to study, and you do this study. It lasts 2 years, and you come up with this position. But they've come up with something new around that time. Several leagues, or one league in particular, already did a study on it. So instead of going through doing a whole new study, we say at convention, some leagues studied it already. They have a very complete position. Why don't we just adopt the position without studying it? We're going to assume that they arrived at their position by studying. See, and so that's what we did at this convention. We adopted it, and it's called concurring with another league. And we have all kinds of league members with different opinions on everything. I was state president at the time. That happened. When I went back after convention, some people were outraged. And I said, we're just not going to act on this because we concurred. Everybody should understand all the ramifications of why that other league came up with this position. So I calmed everybody's nerves and said, we will study it. We will accept the position unless for some reason, after we look at it, we don't agree with it. But basically, we're just going to study it so everybody knows why we did this and understands it. A couple of Missouri league members, maybe 2 or 3, resigned from the league because they could not accept that position. A couple of people were sorry that we got the position, but they were league members and they knew that we studied a whole lot of different issues, and people have different opinions on various things. We're a multi-issue organization that we can be a member of the league and not have to agree with every single position. I know some people who are a little upset that the league took that position, but let me tell you, they're strong supporters now. So that was the end of that. All the people who know that position, who want to join the league, if that bothers them, they wouldn't join the league. But it's not an issue. It's something that's accepted. I remember one of my close friends said when she came back, she was Catholic, and not every Catholic is against reproductive choices. I think she probably was in the back of her head. And she said, no, I'm sorry the league took that position, but that was the end of it. And never mentioned again in all these years. She's a very active league member now. So did I answer your question?
You did. You answered it really well. How do you feel the league does in terms of reaching out to marginalized communities? The league had not an excellent history with the African American community for a lot of reasons, and that's something that the league is not shy about admitting. But what about other marginalized communities? What about the LGBTQ community? What about the Jewish community? Do you feel that the league makes really good efforts in being inclusive? What are your personal thoughts on that?
That is a big issue in the league, in our goals for the last 4 years or whatever. Now, a lot of this is from my experience rather than the whole league. As far as I'm concerned, I never saw any discrimination whatsoever on any level as a member of the league on the national, state, and local level. I know they had their Black group and then the other groups, but they integrated on the leadership level. The Black people would be a part of decision-making for the league. I never saw any discrimination or discussion of it ever in the league. The only thing when the subject came up was we do not have enough Black members and we should do something about it. All we have is a few Black members, but we have a few more than we used to. And how we got Black members is mainly through Black members we already had. They would bring in a friend. I never belonged to the St. Louis City League. Now we're all one league because we merged. But back then I belonged to the Central County League. And we had a couple of Black members. And I'm guessing that all the leagues had some. Maybe the city might have had more. We never had a lot. But not because we didn't want to, but we didn't know how. When we started in with the civil rights, we tried to figure out why Black women didn't want to join the league. In the beginning of our history, we were one of the only prominent women organizations that was not affiliated with churches and that kind of thing. In the 70s and 80s, there were so many organizations that main function was civil rights and ending discrimination. They wanted to go to the organization that was concentrating on the issue that was most important to them, and that was civil rights. Therefore, it was hard to recruit Black members at that time, even though there were lots of active members. To this day, we don't have a lot of Black members. But so many Black women have gotten the experience in these other organizations that almost everyone that has joined are organization type people. They know what to do, but they had leadership positions in their Black groups. Now, I don't know all the things the National League did. I found this book called The League of Women Voters of the United States. And I guess this was the goal. The League will be the leading membership organization in having fairly embraced, implemented, and maintained total diversity in both membership and programs. So that was this goal in 1993. I should say, never did we say, oh, we are a completely integrated organization. We always had Black members. And we incrementally talked about it locally. And we have more Black members now because we've made more of an effort. One of our co-presidents is Black. She was recruited by a previous board member who met her in some community outreach program that she did. She said, I met this terrific person at such a meeting, and I'm going to invite her to be on the board because I think she could just jump right in. And they did. That was not that long ago, 6 or 8 years ago. Now she's on the state board and a co-president locally. She's very bright and she's terrific. And there were other Black members on our local board. And they probably were invited by somebody who knew them, who met them somewhere. Okay, next question.
So why is the League important to you and why do you continue your membership?
That should be obvious. I got interested and it satisfied a lot of my needs. It was educational. I learned so much. I learned leadership skills, some of them which I might have already had and didn't know it, though I must admit I was president of my class in college.
All right.
Most of the students were male. It was right after World War II. Why did I join the League? I told you I was bored and I got this opportunity and I found out that I learned a lot. I made friends. And now I'm talking about making friends. Might be not so important to other people, but it was very significant in my life. To this day, if you look at my friends, my personal friends, almost every one of them is a League member. If they weren't a League member, there was somebody else I met from another organization that I belonged to. I had a leadership role in. And how did I make so many great friends? Because I joined these study groups. We studied this, we studied that. I wasn't the chair of every one of them. When you have a study group, you have to come up with a report. And so you have to do research. So you have to work together with other members. So you meet between committee meetings, you meet and you study this and you all share what you're doing. And because you're working together so closely, you become friends. And it extends to outside of the organization. And then with some of them, you get to meet their husbands. And so you become friends as couples. I've gone to weddings of some people I met in the League's kids and stuff. You really became good friends. Still are, after 63 years.
That's wonderful.
Welcome back. 2 things that stick with me from Sydell's interview. First, a League meeting is successful if you leave having learned something. And second, the League is a place to make lifelong friends while learning and doing the work. Today, League members are taking a stand for reproductive rights. When the Dobbs decision was announced at the end of June 2022, several of us from the St. Louis League were at the League's national convention in Denver. At convention, Stephanie Wiegers and I prodded the LWVUS to participate in a local demonstration for the right for women to have control of their own bodies. Here, I'm going to read Stephanie's recollection of that day. The day and time to participate in the rally was a compromise between the LWVUS and the LWV St. Louis. I had enough delegates from Missouri, Texas, Florida, and a few California leagues willing to leave the convention to march at any time, and that would end the business side of that day's meeting. I originally wanted to meet outside at 5:15 and head to Capitol Hill because the Denver Avalanche hockey team was playing in the Stanley Cup Finals at home that night. And I thought that the press coverage and the biggest impact, that is, eyes on us, would be best as close to 5 as possible. You know, there would be traffic helicopters and coverage of the hockey playoffs and the 5 o'clock Democratic Socialist gathering, all sorts of things. But the National League wanted to wait until Saturday because of the convention business, and it didn't seem to me that the staff really wanted to deal with organizing a march. When the staff saw Angie and me with stacks of poster board and bags of markers, they started considering marching Friday around 5 more seriously. And then when they saw we rearranged tables so that people could make their own posters as they came out of the league session, the National League caved and sent staff to collect LWV signs from the local league and gather any poster board they could. Coming together at 5:40 gave us enough time to finish convention business and be at the rally during rush hour and to catch the end of the Democratic Socialist group that was there at 5 o'clock. We could all march as one big group back toward the hotel. As the League made our way to the Capitol building demonstration, We had several groups of youth come out of stores and restaurants and join us in the march. That was one of the most memorable parts of the march. And then cars honked in support as we crossed the streets. And as the LWV group approached the ongoing protests on the front lawn of the Capitol building, the speaker stopped speaking, and you heard a murmur through the crowd at seeing such a huge group of people marching towards them to join them in protest. The crowd started clapping and cheering for us. I heard several League members ask, "Are they clapping for us?" And I said, "Yes, we just brought all these people to join them in solidarity. People who are their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents' age." That part brought tears to my eyes and kept me on the edge of crying the rest of the day. Later after dinner, several St. Louis League members returned the support we felt when the youth joined us in the streets, and we left our restaurant to march with the group that was in the streets protesting SCOTUS and supporting LGBTQ pride. I'm grateful I was where I was when I heard the devastating news, with LWV members from all over the country in Denver. And that's the end of Stephanie's stirring story. Many attendees at the convention were upset, but we turned that anger into action, marching in the streets of Denver with other like-minded people. Being together in this disappointment made it somehow more bearable. That is the League. Friends doing the work for our rights together. Thank you for listening today. We thank our LWV STL Centennial Committee, who worked many hours to honor the suffragists of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The interviews were conducted in 2020 and 2021 during COVID, mostly via Zoom. Come back to hear even more about the League's past and present. This oral history project was made possible through the generous donations of League members. It's produced by Cindy Lenz and Angie Dunlap. Thanks again.